It's both very lonely. I mean, everyone knows that, but it's also not as lonely as you might think. I think, especially if you're at a big company like I was and thinking about making this leap and you think things aren't possible and what do I do outside of this big company? It is amazing how many smaller companies, startups, whatever it might be, founder-led companies are doing really interesting things and also willing to help each other. I'd say that was one of the things I had no clue about in my prior life. And so the advice is like, both take the leap and all. I mean, life's too short. I mean, like, what are you going to regret? I would regret never done this. I remember staring at my wife who was pregnant with my firstborn, Owen, at the time, thinking, is the advice I give him, am I following that? And would I regret not making a leap? Like, I remember staring at my wife, my soon to be firstborn, thinking about that. And so one is take the leap, but the second is really lean into asking help of others.
Welcome to A Founder's Life, and I'm your host, Leo Gestetner. On this show, we dive into the real stories behind the highs and lows of entrepreneurship and how we pursue a more balanced and meaningful life along the way. This podcast is sponsored by Thanks, helping founders like us scale with reliable remote talent. I'll share more about them later, but if you email founders@thanks.com, that's THANKZ.com, with the subject line A Founder's Life, you'll get $1,000 off your first month. Now, I'm excited to be joined by David Boehmer. David, it's great to have you here. Thanks for joining. Can you please kick things off by introducing yourself to our audience?
Sure. And Leo, thanks so much for having me. Quick background, German born, Canadian raised, single mom, small towns, Canada, family of lumberjacks and beaver trappers. I mean, that's sort of the real Canadian thing. And then tripped into the States because I happened to kick a soccer ball. I was sort of the weird foreigner who played soccer, not hockey growing up. I think up to this point, I think a little bit of my career in life was a series of getting lucky and tripping into things. I was in New York in 2000. People were getting laid off, dot-com crisis starting, and tripped my career, and 20 years later started my own companies. It's been a fun voyage, many different countries and cities along the way, and excited to be here.
Well, thank you. And I always love it when you talk about getting lucky. One of my favorite ones was, I think it was Ford, who was being interviewed, and the journalist said, "Well, you seem very lucky, Mr. Ford." And he said, "Well, it's funny, the harder I work, the luckier I become."
Yeah, it's interesting. I look back at my third job. I'd say my first two jobs one was get a work visa and into New York legally, as one does as a foreigner, to sort of get your way to New York. I think I'd watched too many Michael J. Fox movies. The secret of my success is to get to New York and good things happen. And then my second job, the company ended up being, quite frankly, a bit of a fraud, which none of us kids knew. And so crawling into the firm where I ended up spending 16 years, happened to have a friend, happened to get a call. I had one suit, one tie, one shirt, somehow convinced them I was employable, and happened to be one of the greatest partners of this firm. And you spend your nights working your butt off and all that, but so much of it was, I guess, taking advantage of being around people, mentors and such, who actually open those doors for you. It sounds cheesy as shit, but it's true. So I think I agree with you. I definitely worked my butt off. There's no question about it. But if I look around me, I also was exposed to people that actually, for some reason, took a shot on the Canadian who kind of talked a bit funny and had poor grammar, and they put up with me, which is pretty tremendous. And that for 16 years, they put up with me. It's amazing.
Sounds like a fun journey getting there. So talk to us a little bit more about if there's anything on the journey that you haven't said that you'd like to fill in, and also talk a little more about what you're doing now.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I remember the day I was done with my corporate job and first world problems, London, New York, San Francisco, did the Davos thing, wore the suit, all that kind of good stuff. A world I didn't know existed. And I remember the exact day. I remember looking out of we're based in San Francisco, my office, looking out the window. I was on a call, and something I'd heard every 2 years as a quote unquote new idea was again, positioned as a new idea. I looked down the hall. There was someone 28 years older than me still doing the same job. And I was just done. I just remember being absolutely done. That moment was finished. And so there was the feeling at the time of, I got to do something different. I got to make a mark. And it's only now, I've been running Banff for 5 years now. And it's only looking back and spending time with therapy and all that kind of good stuff one does, where I have sort of unpacked why I wanted to start something. Because I didn't grow up. Like, I'm always amazed. And I'm sure you meet them all the time on this podcast and such, people that grew up knowing they wanted to be entrepreneurs and their parents were entrepreneurs and they built. I never did. I grew up paycheck to paycheck. I grew up, you did what you did just to, the roof over the head and such. And so the idea of taking a risk, my mom cried when I told her I was leaving my cushy job to start my own company. But it's been interesting, like looking back saying, well, why at that point did I make a leap? And I think ultimately when you grow up as, son of a single mom, the poor kid in the neighborhood, the town, whatever. There is this insecurity of I want to matter. I want to build something that matters and kind of has some ripple in the world. And it sounds, I know, again, horribly cheesy, but at that moment when I looked out the window and it's done, the real emotion I had is, can I just build something that doesn't exist? It can be little, I don't care, but something that didn't exist before. And it happened. I can tell you what I do, what we do, but and the genesis of this whole thing, it wasn't that I grew up in an entrepreneurial family at all. It was just that this desire, this need to build something that didn't exist before.
And tell us what that is.
Great. So I hate luck and chance. You'll hear me talk about my mom a lot. She had a huge influence on my life. My mom was a German mechanical engineer, which means operations, tight, processes. You get stuff done. And, the first 20 years of my career was an executive search. So recruiting for big CEOs and board members and this and this. And it gave me front row seats to seeing why and how things actually happen. Why someone gets a call for a job, why someone gets a job to be an advisor, why if PE firms get a shot at a deal, whatever it might be. You'd love to think that some equals playing field, bottoms up approach. It isn't. It's sort of who knows who and who's played the game. And you see that. It's so much of life is true lizard brain. A bunch of guys sit in a room, say, who do you know? Who do you know? And then they get the call, whatever it might be. And I hate it. I never felt comfortable with the fact that I was a hungover 25-year-old kid deciding who's getting calls for a big CEO search. And that seemed bonkers to me. That seemed asinine. And so ultimately it was, eventually, it was I that first year. This was 2020 with COVID, a newborn and a 2-year-old, which is quite a journey to say the least on itself. But how could we just make this whole system work better? And ultimately, I don't think in the pure sense why someone gets access to a room and why a room gets access to a person is something you could build an algo against. I just don't, that's not me fighting AI. I think there's lots of things AI can do. It is really about who you know, what are you known as, what's your rep? And so the hypothesis is what if we flip the model? What if we built a business where we actually worked for the individual? It's not a Hollywood agent. That's sort of like the lazy way to put it. But if a corporate or the CEO of a director had someone work for them, could we make the whole system work better for everyone? And could we take the learnings that I had being in those rooms in front row seats and now apply it to individuals and say, this is how you need to plan your brand, your journey, your networks to actually get the shot. And so ultimately it's a little bit, if I look back at it, it's probably a connection to myself thinking, how the heck do you play the game as a kid and trying to figure out how to get into rooms? And now applying everything I'd learned to how do we actually empower executives and individuals to actually take control of their careers. So much of your career is you sit there and you hope someone calls you. I hate hope. Hope's not a strategy. How can we actually give people agency to think about and plan what they do in their careers?
I think people a chance to really control their own lives a little more. Love that. And what does family mean to you?
It is my first and only, my only priority. It is my first priority without question. I grew up without a dad, as mentioned before. And so in some ways, I've been thinking about being a father since I was 4 when we left my dad. So being an active father, I got 2 young boys, 5 and 7. They're complete monkeys, absolutely just active beyond belief. But that's a massive, massive priority. I have a wife who works and we support her. I believe she's a star in what she does. And so that's my first. And it's been interesting, on this whole journey. I mentioned starting Banff during COVID. I mean, I literally left my W-2 job March 2020 and started Banff April 2020. And, when we think, that was, I had a 2-year-old and 1 knee, a newborn about to be born in May. But actually interesting is that getting this thing started in COVID strangely helped me continue to be a supportive father. I could, manage my calendar. I could control what I want to do. So actually I look back at, while some would say, I can't believe you left the cushy job to start something in 2020. Actually, for my family, it was incredibly, incredibly helpful and it made it all work.
Yeah, I think COVID gave a lot of people advantages in that respect. So yes, a lot of negatives as well. I mean, like for me, certainly it allowed me to connect with my son in a way that I hadn't before. He was 14 at the time when it kicked off, so a lot older than yours. But, we ended up spending 3 hours a day, either weightlifting or boxing, and then dinner and TV together. And it became a daily routine that we continued until he went to university. Where,
I was the last of my friends to have kids. Most of my kids had kids your son's age as well, and they're off in the pool and doing things like this. We were taking a sprinkler and saying, can my 2-year-old enjoy a sprinkler for a half hour? Or take paint and put in a Ziploc bag, and then starting the business in between. But I mean, you asked the question, what does family mean? It is the most important. I gotta say, it's fun too, connecting to what we do every day too. Moving from a B2B business, where the companies were our clients, my prior life, to a B2C business. It's been awesome, man. Like, it turns out people are really nice, but they're not all assholes, right? There's a bit of like, when you work for them, I think because the model is B2C. We're truly in the kitchen with our clients. And so you get to know the CEOs as parents, right? Brothers, sisters, whatever it might be. They open themselves up in a way they never did in my prior life. And that gives advantages to things they care about and making sure they're directed. But you're also able to be your true self. You know, when the kid runs in and you got to run off, individuals don't mind because it's that person to person. So I've actually, it was a surprise in this business. I didn't expect it or know to expect it, but being a B2C business, I say both allows me to be more open about my family than maybe I was in my prior life and the importance of that. And also just hear more about others' personal focuses as well.
I get that. Although I do think that with COVID, people have been more, I'm going to call it accepting on the fact that people have a family, I think, which is very positive. I think it's,
BBC, right, with video on YouTube where the kid ran in the background. We all thought that was a quaint, funny thing. I mean, that's sort of the story of our lives now, right? Between the dog, the kid, whoever it is comes in the back.
Yes, although, I do think on the flip side, people shouldn't have their kids screaming in the background too much.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Completely fair.
But but it's definitely been a lot more accepted, which is great. And what do you like to do for health?
So it's changed over the years. So I played soccer, football growing up, and then I wasn't allowed to do a lot. I grew up in Vancouver, where I went to high school in Vancouver. That's where the final stop of my childhood. Yeah, so I couldn't mountain bike and ski and all these things you do in Vancouver because of my soccer. So I had a sign agreement, didn't do. So post college, I started doing everything I wasn't allowed to do. So doing dumb things off dumb cliffs and all that kind of good stuff. I happened to have a bit of a tumble, 2014, did 200 meters off a cliff in Chamonix and broke my pelvis, my neck, ripped my shoulder, all this kind of fun stuff. And so since then, I've had to change what I do. So I can't run anymore. I can't bike anymore. I just got a new shoulder. I do a lot of mountain biking here in the backyard. Was back on the skis right away, so do quite a bit of that. I am a 46-year-old hockey rookie. I've got a massive chip in my shoulder that I never played hockey, as I mentioned before, and decided one day it's time to go play hockey. So I bumble around with a bunch of old dudes a couple times a week early in the morning. But yeah, the most time we've got hills in the back here. We go early in the morning in the dark and mountain bike in the trails back here. It's a lot of fun.
That's fun. I think it's nice to get out there. I always was into road biking more. A lot of friends who are into mountain biking. LA, you get a mix of the two.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's yeah, no, I agree that it's really amazing how much, at least for me in my life and maybe as a kids, and I'm sure everyone had this, how much COVID even shaped that. I mean, when you ask that question, I'm going to start with, well, COVID, we started mountain biking in the dark because we had to stay away from people. And now I'm the crazy guy at 4:35 in the morning in the dark mountain biking. And is there any rational reason or sane reason? No, it's just kind of what we got used to in COVID. And that became my pattern, right? And sort of, I like being in the dark mountain biking. Really quite strange.
Fun. And talking about actually fun, what do you like to do for fun beyond mountain biking?
At this point with 2 young kids, own company, trying to stay at least a bit healthy, that becomes 24 hours in a hurry. So I'd say, not that that's it. There's a lot in that, but, we just had vacation with the boys. I went to Europe, met the family, but, by and large, between the kids' activities, they're into a lot. And this is my first time starting a company. I'm sure you've spoken to people that have done many, many of these. To me, one of the biggest surprises, I guess, is how much I can't stop thinking about it. Doesn't mean I can't stop working, right? Like I definitely am trying to, certain times a day, put the phone away. I'm with the kids, all that kind of good stuff. But I'm just constantly thinking about it. And so more often than not, I have a piece of paper around. I'm drawing pictures or trying to remember something real quick. So I'd say that fills a lot of the minutes and times is just drawing weird, scratchy pictures I stick in my pocket for later.
I mean, that is the entrepreneurial journey. There's no real turning off unless you're doing some activity, or maybe when you're with the kids, you're mostly thinking about them. But yeah, I mean, you're always thinking about things because in the end, it all relies on you.
It's also been the creative part of it. Like I look back at one of the reasons I left. I miss being creative. My mom was both an engineer and an artist, and I miss drawing and building and systems and all stuff. And I'm sure I'm not the only one where it's just this constant deluge of new ideas, and I need to put them somewhere. If I can't, in the shower, you have an idea, I need to write it or dictate it or something. Otherwise, I can't leave my brain. So a lot of it now has been less the stress of I have to get this done or that done. It's more just the constant deluge of new ideas and creativity, trying to put that somewhere to get it out of the mind.
And so for you, how does a balanced life look? And I often say a balanced life is that center line, because there's times that you'll be non-stop in work and other times non-stop in kids, or you're away or whatever. But how does overall a balanced life look for you?
One, it's less the what and maybe the how. Actually, I've talked to a lot of my clients about this too. Many of them have made incredible amounts of money and they're wealthy and all that kind of stuff. To me, I think the point of success, whether it's financial, whatever, ultimately, I don't want to buy a new thing. I want to control my calendar. And so to me, it starts with a balanced life is, do I have the opportunity to control my own calendar, or versions of it? Obviously we have full control, but do I have the opportunity, if I am in that zone, I'm making decisions that are about me and what's best for my family versus what someone else needs from me. Right. And if I'm in that space in a good way, and obviously we have clients, we have to do things, all that, but, can I make decisions that start first with that? So to me, that balanced life is just the ability to make those kinds of decisions, the strength. And I'm not overstating things, but the strength, the confidence to say, I'm doing this for myself, or I'm doing this for my family, and I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with the implications, or if someone's upset at me, I don't care. And what fills in that, whether it's go have a date night with my wife, or go kick a ball with the kid in the garage, or whatever it might be. And there's a lot of different things that fit in that. But yeah, with me, it starts first with the ability to actually make the decision about my calendar. If I got that, then I feel balanced on it.
Perfect. And what has been a pivotal moment in your life? I think you've obviously got a couple that came up there.
I remember the first time you said that, and it's just sort of like you have the slideshow goes through your brain, all these moments in your life. I think it's learning how to work. I remember, it must have been second grade or so, doing one of those poster projects that you hand in. It was about Saturn or the solar system or something. I don't even remember what it was. And I completely made a mess of it. And I remember my mother sitting me down, slowing me down. I'm not good at slowing me down. And she had this big drafting table. She was an architect earlier in her life. And she taught me how to do a poster. I know it sounds so silly that I'm remembering that, 40 years later, but I remember that moment. I remember that this is about quality. It's about doing things well. And there was that moment. And then I remember setting tile one summer with my cousin. I come from a family of both the lumberjacks, but also people that build houses and very blue collar and actually know how to build stuff, which I'm horribly jealous of. And I spent the summer just schlepping tile with him and grout and cutting things and building. And I remember, and I probably was 14, 15 that time, because he also taught me how to drive manual in parking lots that summer. But I remember feeling, I know how to work now. There's something about I understand quality, and I understand how important work is. And that, to me, I've had big moments, marriage accidents, kids being born. Obviously, those are huge things. But I think that really shaped me. Those two things, I remember the before and after that in a way I don't remember before and after of other things that happened.
That's nice. That's early on. And what's one piece of advice you'd give to an aspiring entrepreneur?
It's both very lonely. Everyone knows that. But it's also not as lonely as you might think. I think especially if you're at a big company like I was and thinking about making this leap and you think things aren't possible and what do I do outside of this big company? It is amazing how many smaller companies, startups, whatever it might be, founder-led companies are doing really interesting things and also willing to help each other. I'd say that was one of the things I had no clue about in my prior life. And so the advice is, both take the leap and all. Life's too short. What are you going to regret? I would regret never done this. I remember staring at my wife, who was pregnant with my firstborn, Owen at the time, thinking, advice I give him, am I following that? And would I regret not making a leap? I remember staring at my wife, my soon to be firstborn, thinking about that. And so one is take the leap, but the second is really lean into asking help of other founders. It is, to me, I found it absolutely amazing and a surprise because I wasn't in that world, how much founders help each other and then how much almost like street cred you get for making the leap. There's a bit of you're in the club if you make the leap, whether you're successful or not. There really is. People respect those that make the leap and everyone's willing to help each other out. So lean in, ask for help. I've always been terrible at asking for help, but I found there's so much help out there from fellow founders. That was a big both surprise and piece of advice I'd give.
Right. Well, thank you. And how can people find you?
Do we still say www? But our website is banffadvisors.com. There's a decent amount there. We're on LinkedIn, obviously, as well. We put out quarterly reports on our view of the market for our clients with, private curated events. Those are a little less obvious, but definitely check us out online. We do a decent amount of sharing some, but not all. There's this balance of being confidential, but also sharing what we do. And then for any aspiring founders, especially I think those coming from big companies where you kind of think, what the heck does leap look like? I'm maybe one that escaped the big company. And if I can ever help, I'm happy to.
Well, thank you. Thanks for joining today.
Awesome. I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, tell your friends, and please leave a review.